everybody. Welcome back. It's been a while, but we're here. We got the original twosome, the dynamic duo, for another exciting episode of the Ohio Wrestlecast. How we doing today, Mark?
I'm not bad. I'm doing great. I'm ready to get back to this. It's been a little while.
I'm excited. I've had people asking for some more content. I think we're starting to hit our stride. And as you can see today, we do not have any special guests.
No.
Had a lot of fun with Big Jeff Hughes for a couple episodes, and then our special Pearl Jam album review with Evan Wiley and Josh. I think that was a lot of fun.
That was a blast.
But today, let's just get back to it. A couple of dudes talking wrestling.
Yep, back to wrestling.
Back to wrestling. Before we get into today's topic, man, there's been a lot of, maybe not a lot happening in modern wrestling because we started off always kind of talking about today's product and I don't know. You feeling kind of flat right now, kind of watching today's product, like just
a little bit. I feel like most of the most exciting things about today's product is stuff that's not actually happening in the ring.
Not happening in the ring, and definitely not in the WWE ring. The All In show is definitely a hot topic. Well. New Japan Pro Wrestling doing a lot of cool stuff. But on the WWE front, we have Money in the Bank. It came and gone. Alexa Bliss winning, cashing in was kind of cool. Good way to get out of the Rousey match without, losing her mystique. But then you had Braun Strowman winning, and it was I was talking to Jeff immediately. It's just, man, so predictable, and it's a guy who didn't need it.
Everyone was saying he was going to win, too. Everyone.
And Money in the Bank has been so much fun because of the unpredictability about it. You figure Kevin Owens would be such a shithead heel to hold that briefcase, and you never knew when he's cashing in.
Yeah.
Could have been something different.
And we also knew he wasn't going to cash it in that night because there was no Raw title match. That's
just it. And who knows when the next Raw title match is? And again, the interesting thing is what's going on outside the ring. We don't even know when Brock Lesnar is coming back. There's the rumor they might not even be back for SummerSlam.
Yeah,
at this point.
that. Yeah.
The one thing I was kind of thinking that's kind of cool with Braun Strowman is that he's by far the furthest thing from a chicken shit. Whereas might be one of those things where if Brock Lesnar's there, he'll just walk right out to him with his contract and be like, "All right, motherfucker, like, thanks for showing up. Let's do it." That could be kind of cool. But other than that, there's not a lot of exciting action happening, both on Raw and SmackDown for me.
No, not at all. And I'm more of a SmackDown guy than a Raw guy, too, and even SmackDown's kind of a dud.
Yeah, Rusev is the number one contender, but I feel like I feel like everything's kind of killing time to get to SummerSlam. But even with that being said, I don't even really know where they're going for SummerSlam. Here we are at the beginning of July, and I'm not really sure what direction they're headed.
I thought for sure when I thought Brock Lesnar was going to be at SummerSlam that it was going to be Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar again. But now they're kind of pushing not Roman Reigns.
Which is about as exciting as a fart in church anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Last thing I want to see.
AJ Styles kind of seems like he's treading water over there after the Nakamura feud, which I thought that last man standing match was very good.
Oh, for sure.
I enjoyed that.
Definitely.
But now, we got Rusev in the main event picture, which is cool, and I'm kind of excited for the match. I think it would be a good mesh of styles there, but I don't really see them getting behind Rusev for a full title reign, but hey, they could surprise us.
You're absolutely right.
But yeah, SummerSlam is the second biggest show of the year. With WrestleMania, you usually have a pretty good idea of how things are forming a couple months into it, and I have no idea. No idea where they're going at this point.
No, I hope I'm pleasantly surprised, though.
Hope so too. We'll talk more about SummerSlam as we get closer, and hopefully we have some exciting stuff to talk about. We can't go without saying how great NXT. And did you see the new the second edition of Johnny Gargano and
Takeover?
At Takeover and Tommaso Ciampa.
Dude, they took the ring apart.
You want to talk about telling a story, man? Telling a story with what they're doing.
I immediately went to the ring apart thing because I thought that was just perfect. I know it had been done before. Mm-hmm. But, I think people who don't really – if people were watching that weren't really into wrestling, it probably put the reality of wrestling, way more into perspective.
Oh, sure.
They see that, look, dude, they're landing on 2x6s.
Yes,
and with, this much foam on
yes,
it.
Yeah. It ain't much. You got to know what you're doing on there to protect yourself. And what was cool about that is they opened up the ring it was still probably 15 minutes or so in, but it was relatively early – it's compared to the rest of the match. And a lot of times when you see stuff like that, you see a table set up or a turnbuckle pad come off, and you're like, well, the match isn't going to be over until they use that, right?
Yeah.
Those guys were so good, they got to the point where, like, maybe they're just not going to use that at all.
Yeah, like the last minute was when they used it.
Yeah,
really.
it was the very last thing. But they told the story the entire time where you thought that match could have gone either way, could have ended at any time, and that was a roller coaster ride. One of the best matches of the year. If you haven't seen that yet, NXT TakeOver Chicago, check it out. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa. If you gave that a 5-star rating, I wouldn't argue with you.
No, neither would I. I'd give it a 5.5, even
5.5. We have our own podcast. We can do our own Meltzer ratings if we want to.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And then talk about a good segue there, right? With star ratings. Yeah. Talk about a good segue because today's topic we thought would be a lot of fun. What we're going to do today, we're going to talk overrated and underrated matches. And, modern day, well, not even modern day, really, as far back as the dirt sheets were started. A lot of matches were reviewed on star ratings, and really it was an easy way to kind of look back and say, oh, this is a match I need to check out. Dave Meltzer's probably have the most famous star system, his 5-star ratings, where, again, you kind of look back at any old school review, look at what the smart marks or the journalists are calling, what they find to be great matches. And we were looking back, and we've seen some that I don't know that we agree with Meltzer on. We might feel that got slightly overrated. And we're also going to go back and look at some that are underrated, and not necessarily just in the star ratings, but just don't get talked about all the time as being great matches and matches that we feel that everybody should check out. So I think we're going to start off. Let's talk some overrated matches. And I've seen you did some research, my man. I'm impressed.
I did.
I'm impressed. So overrated matches, and to do this, we're thinking about matches that everybody knows, everybody still talks about, but maybe either don't hold up the test of time or weren't as great as we once thought they were. You want to get us started, Mark? You've been checking out some stuff.
Well, I have a pick for most overrated out of all the ones I watched, but I guess I'll go ahead and throw out one as an honorable mention.
Okay, honorable/dishonorable mention.
To go along with the 5-star rating. This is one that Dave Meltzer gave 5 stars, according to what I read.
Okay.
But I thought Bret Hart versus Owen Hart at SummerSlam 94 was overrated. It was a cage match.
It was a cage match. I remember the big blue with the big steel bars. Yep. Yeah.
Yep. Brother versus brother.
Right.
They were. I also read someone in the comments of. Well, it was a video I was watching, but someone in the comments mentioned that this was a time where blood was banned, so they actually had to compensate for not being able to bleed.
Yeah.
And they basically turned it, and I could even see it in the match as I was watching it. It looked like a sibling rivalry, which is probably what they were going for. Like two brothers. The way I compared it was like two brothers fighting in their room, just trying to stop each other from going to tell mom. You know what I mean?
Well, there was a lot of like Owen being really close to the cage door and Brett literally diving and grabbing his ankles.
The whole match was just built about like, I'm gonna get out. No, you're not. Like they're tugging on each other.
Which, it tells a story. If you get out of the cage, you win the world title.
No, and if you look at it in the way of like two brothers having a sibling, you can see that. Like I can relate to it having an older brother. Sure. You know what I mean? But
I want to go back to what you said though, not having blood, which they did. They went in and out of having blood bans, and I don't really think they had a whole lot of blood until you got close to the Attitude Era. Yeah, and in a cage match, and I'm a guy that, and being in the business where I'm hot and cold on it. There is health issues with bleeding, of course, and for a while in the Attitude Era and the ECW era, I felt like there was just blood for the sake of having blood, and it was overkill. But I feel in a steel cage match, there should be blood. I mean, I really do, especially if you go back to all the classics, some of those NWA matches and stuff, the War Games matches. Even then later when you get to the Hell in a Cell, which really is kind of WWE's take on like a War Games, there needs to be a bloodbath, man. I mean, I've only been in one steel cage match in my personal career, but I made it a point that as soon as I hit the cage, as soon as my head hit the cage, there was going to be blood. I didn't want to have one of those matches where you're throwing each other into this steel cage. I mean, and it's a legitimate steel cage. By all means, there'll be another story for another day. Steel cages hurt. Yeah, motherfucker.
I imagine. Steel hurts.
It hurts. I wanted to tell the story that cage is brutal. So as soon as I hit that cage, I wanted to come up bleeding. So you had this match, and it was long, man. It was a long match, which I've actually heard on Bruce Pritchard's podcast that the main event of The Undertaker versus Undertaker was supposed to be longer, supposed to have a better story involved. That wasn't a good match at all.
Yeah.
But Brett and Owen went quite a bit long, and there was some heat over that. But yeah, so that match got 5 stars, which I did not know. I didn't know they got a 5-star rating.
Like I said, don't quote me on that. That's just what I read.
Yeah.
I don't know how they know or whatever, but it was supposedly a 5-star match from Dave Meltzer.
And you weren't feeling 5 stars at all.
Now I was thinking maybe like 3.5.
Yeah, so a good match, but definitely not an all-time classic.
No, and that's not even my pick. That's my runner-up.
Oh yeah, I think most of the matches we're probably going to talk about on these overrateds. I mean, they're overrated, but they're not going to be necessarily stinkers, But we just feel like they're a little bit too highly regarded. So in this case with Owen and Brett, by no means was a bad match. The work was good. It's Owen and Bret Hart.
Yeah.
But it was long. It was a long steel cage match, and if it's your cup of tea, you might like it more than somebody else. But yeah, I wouldn't think it was a 5-star match myself either. So in that case, I would put it on the overrated list for myself too. So, but that's your honorable mention. You got one that you think
that's only, and I'll explain later why. But I thought Hogan versus Rock at WrestleMania 18 was also overrated.
Okay. Now, did you look up to see what the star rating was for that match?
I did not.
All right, you know what?
The only reason I knew the star rating for the other one is because it was there when I was looking it up.
I see. I'm actually, I got a pretty cool list here. We're actually listing every pay-per-view with just the star ratings.
Sweet.
Yeah, so this is Meltzer's Wrestling Observer. He gave the Rock and Hollywood Hogan 3 stars. So
okay.
Maybe
it's not overrated then.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think anybody will go back and look at that match and say it was a technical masterpiece or it was, 5-star. It wasn't Flair and Steamboat or it wasn't Omega Okada.
Yeah.
But the crowd was in. I think that match was all about the crowd.
The reason it was probably overrated in the sense of where I was looking this up at is the fact that it was kind of like Rock versus Cena. It was built up a lot. It was made to be. I guess that wouldn't be considered overrated. That was overhyped.
Well, and anybody in the business will say, hey, if you got the crowd involved, that's what makes the best match, and if it makes the most money, So if they went in there and played a game of Chinese checkers and the crowd was going insane the way they were, you would call it a success.
Yeah.
So as far as now that's the thing. Now you go back, 15 years ago, right? And you watch it. It probably doesn't have the same effect as it did then.
In the moment,
yeah. To have Hulk Hogan coming back to take on, arguably the biggest star of the day. But and that was the point in time that The Rock was white hot, but the crowd was starting to maybe grow a little tired of his shtick. And honestly, it happened to all the top guys.
Yeah.
With the exception of, I'd say, Austin, but Austin had some heel turns in between. But even Hogan, by the time 93 came around, they got a little tired of his shtick. They definitely got tired of his babyface shtick in WCW. Then he had a very memorable heel run. Cena, I don't even think they let his shtick get started before they got tired of it. And they started rebelling against it.
No.
But The Rock, Super Rock, I think people started to get tired of it a little bit. Hogan coming back was called a nostalgia act, but it was also a time where the internet started getting smarter. It was a time where, WWE had bought out WCW and ECW. They had owned it all.
Yeah.
So it was basically, just their ice cream shop, and they're going to give you whatever ice cream, that they wanted to give you.
It was the beginning of like the dream match.
Right, era. Yeah, because they had all those assets at their disposal.
Yeah.
I remember the build-up to that match. I remember Hogan, Hall, and Nash all laid out The Rock with finishers. I'm pretty sure they friggin' ran his The Rock's ambulance over or something like that. Like they were brutal heels, and the crowd cheered every last minute of it because it was a razor's edge and a jackknife and a leg drop back in the WWF ring. They were excited for it, and then you got into that match, and it was supposed to be clear cut. Rocky the babyface and Hogan the heel, and it was not that way at all.
No.
I would just I'd probably disagree a little bit on that overrated because of the magnitude of the match, but it's definitely not an all-time great in-ring work.
No, it was.
Would you agree with that 3-star rating? That.
Oh yeah.
Oh okay.
Yeah, at least, or at the most, I would think.
talking overrated and underrated is all subjective, you know. It really is.
Yeah,
like
it's all opinion.
how we felt. Yeah, you got a couple more notes there, man. What else are you thinking? Let's.
Well, I didn't watch every single one.
Sure.
When you got here, I was watching Rock versus Cena, and I felt like that was another one, just a dream match, but not much happened.
Yeah. Again, that was what was funny about that was that the crowd was so hot for The Rock coming back. It had been a long time since he had been part in that. In the time in between, he became a huge movie star. Still is a huge movie star.
Yeah.
So they were hot for The Rock coming back. I think they were hot for The Rock to win, but by the time that match was said and done, and then they did the same exact match the next year.
Yeah, I was about to say that the fact that they did it again only hurt it more, in my opinion. I think
so. I agree with you there. Go ahead, but I'm going to pull up...
I'll go for it.
Pull up those ratings while we look, see what Meltzer thought.
I was just going to say that the thing about overrated matches is that they're hard because most of these I was expecting to not be that good, and most of them I was like, I can't even say this is overrated. I enjoyed it. Like when it comes to it's kind of automatically half good because it's overrated for some reason, right?
Right.
So turns out most of the things I wrote down that as overrated matches turned out to be not so overrated.
Yeah, I pulled this up right now from WrestleMania 28, which was the first Rock and Cena match. Meltzer gave it 3 3/4 stars. So I think I might actually be on your overrated. In agreement with you there. I actually remember enjoying the first one, but I maybe it was just the nostalgia of having The Rock back. The Rock got the win. I think we all kind of wanted to see Cena get put in his place a little bit at that point in time. So the first match got 3 3/4 stars. Now I remember really not caring at all by the next year, and that one got 3.5 stars as well. So I'm gonna say both of those are fairly overrated because
For sure.
There was a real basic format of big move after big move after big move, false finish after false finish after false finish. The first one you do it okay, you saw it. By the time the second one came, it really was like Rocky 1, Rocky 2, which is different same thing, different outcome.
For sure. Ironically enough, Rocky.
Boy, there you go. Yeah.
Another one I had written down, which I actually watched with you when it happened, was Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair, which I had a hard time agreeing with it being overrated, and I watched it again.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's overrated. I don't.
Okay. That one in there, as we talked earlier about storytelling, the story involved. That was about the story involved. I don't think anybody was expecting Ric Flair at that age to have a all-time classic.
Yeah.
But that I think we all knew he was on his way out. Which of course, Ric Flair being Ric Flair, he did some stuff for TNA. Yeah. But
well, I think that ultimately hurt it in the end.
That you knew the outcome going in?
Well, not the outcome. We all knew Ric Flair wasn't going to win, but I think him ultimately not retiring hurt that.
That's true. When you look back in hindsight, it maybe loses a little bit of its luster that it wasn't the last match. Yeah. It was the last WWE match. Last match that means anything. Isn't that crazy? That was 10 years ago? Doesn't it feel
crazy.
Like 10 years ago? Yeah. Meltzer gave that one 3.5 stars. I'm actually probably on pace with that. They worked their asses off. Shawn was still incredible at that point in time. Ric Flair was, thinking that was probably going to be his absolute last hurrah, gave it his all. I remember Shawn bumping his ass off to make that match. He did the moonsault to the floor. I think he ate the table.
Yeah. Ric Flair bled one last time. Went crazy.
You knew he would. He would. There's just no way you're getting out of that without Ric Flair getting some blood.
Gotta have that white hair highlighted with that beautiful red.
The crimson mask.
Yep.
I know that me and you actually agreed on one. I'll start a couple that come to my mind, and that was, and I got some heat with our overrated, underrated wrestlers before, so I don't want this to be the Jared Shits on Bret Hart podcast because that's absolutely not it. When we get into our underrated matches, we're going to be talking a lot about Bret Hart there, but my very first overrated that comes to mind immediately was Bret and Shawn in the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12. And I remember it, watching as a kid.
That is actually on my overrated match.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
And you didn't. Well, who's got an hour? No, and that. No. But that's the thing. I remember actually getting that WrestleMania as a kid because it was a big deal. It was Shawn's rise to the top. I think most people were ready for it. 1 hour was a lot to ask It's a lot to ask really at any time. And I remember honestly being a little bit bored with the match. I was excited that Shawn Michaels won by the time it was done.
Yeah.
But I remember being a little bit bored with the match, and then I remember once I got into the business and really getting smart to the business and knowing how great Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart both were, thinking this is going to be awesome. Watch two of the absolute best for an hour going at it.
Yep. At WrestleMania,
main event, heavyweight title,
an Iron Man match, like
it's hard to watch. And now here's the thing. As everybody remembers, there was no falls in the hour. It went to an overtime. Shawn won with a super kick in the overtime. They didn't really give you any good near falls in that hour. You never really felt like either guy was even that close to getting a fall. The work was good. It picked up. It slowed down. And you're not going to have a barn burner pace for an hour. Nobody is. I mean, I get exhausted thinking about wrestling for an hour. I get exhausted thinking about wrestling for a half an hour. It is exhausting wrestling for a half an hour.
Yeah,
and you pace yourself. But that being said, like, you never really, I mean, it kind of felt like neither guy was going to get a fall by about half hour, 35 minutes in. And then it felt like you were just kind of course, in hindsight, knowing that it goes the full hour without a fall, you kind of feel it, though. You kind of feel it even then. 30 minutes, half hour, 35 minutes in, and they're kind of just working towards that 60 without any anticipation of trying to beat the other guy. Like, I just didn't feel like that was there watching that match. Now, in fairness, I haven't watched that match for probably about 10 years either, but I'm not really inclined to go back and watch it. It's considered an all-time classic. And I've watched plenty of the all-time classics again and again and again. Sometimes you're in the mood to watch a great match, and you're just going to throw in Bret and Perfect from '91 because you know it's great.
Yeah.
I'm never inclined to throw that match on. So when it's talked about as an all-time classic, it just doesn't hold up for me.
That makes. I mean, I haven't seen the match, so it's hard to say anything about it. But I would have to agree with you on that, just because I know you know what you're talking about.
At least I pretend to.
Yeah. I mean, you talk so passionately about it. I just believe you now.
And the other one that I would absolute classic, which I also think got 5 stars, was Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon WrestleMania 10 ladder match,
which everyone thinks is the first ever ladder match, but I actually learned doing research for this, that it wasn't. But I was gonna watch the first one ever.
Was Bret and Shawn that was on a Coliseum home video?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
First ever ladder match, 1992. Yeah.
Well, there's a whole story about that. I guess we can share it here because
I don't know it.
Well, I'm a nerd that listens to all these wrestling podcasts and reads all these interviews and all this, but. Again, this is not the Jared Shits on Bret Hart podcast, but Bret is notoriously a bit of a whiner in the business and notoriously takes himself a little bit too seriously.
Even in his promos, he's kind of a whiner.
Exactly. Now, in fairness, Bret brought the ladder match to the WWF. It was his idea. He didn't create it, but he knew of it. They did him in Stampede in Calgary in his dad's promotion back in the 80s. Thinking like him and Dynamite Kid might have had one, you know. So he's the one who brought that to Vince's attention, saying this is a match that we could do, and he even said, I think me and Shawn would have some awesome ones. So they did it, and they did it on house shows. It is on a Coliseum home video, which I think is available on the network. Bret and Shawn doing the first ladder match in the WWF in '92. So Bret brought that to him, and he said, yeah, like, I just want to make sure that, you know, it's me and Shawn or me and somebody because I think this is a great match, and blah, 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 blah. We'll come 1994, leading up to Shawn and Razor, they had the whole deal where Shawn got suspended, I think, for a drug test. They crowned a new Intercontinental Champion. It was Razor Ramon. Shawn's back saying, no, I'm the real Intercontinental Champion. Easy storyline. So they each have a belt, hang them above the ring, climb a ladder, and get them. So Shawn and Razor have that ladder match. And again, until you did your research, you thought that was the first ladder match.
I did.
Right? Well, you know, instead of somebody like us going, yeah, I brought that there, but those guys, they killed it. Good for them. No, Bret was pissed. Bret was pissed.
I bet.
Bret was all, you know, that was my match and blah, 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 and he's pissed about it. But to go back to the Overrated, again, it's one of those things that then once the Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudleys got a hold of a ladder, everything else before it looks kind of primitive. So being the first mainstream one, the first one we all know about, is something to be said, and it was a good match by all accounts. But honestly, if you want to talk into that underrated category, they had a rematch at SummerSlam 95 where they were both baby faces. That I thought was better. I thought it was a better match. I thought the action was even more intense and a little more innovative. And again, I think only because it got 5 stars that I'm going to call on the overrated list. I don't think it was quite there. It is definitely good. It was definitely a game-changing match because how many ladder matches have we had since? So for those reasons, it definitely deserves to be held in high regard.
Yeah.
For the match itself, I wouldn't consider it a 5-star match.
What would you give it?
I'd put it at 4. I'd put it at 4. Yeah, I really would.
I mean, that's a controversial thing to say, but I see your logic.
No,
for
I mean,
sure.
go back and watch it.
Especially compared to any ladder match. Even a ladder match you'd probably see on a pay-per-view today.
Sure. And one more that comes to my head, and this is perfect time, and we didn't do this podcast because of it, but it was 20 years ago where probably the most famous Hell in the Cell match took place.
Mankind versus
The Undertaker. Yeah.
Wait.
That was 1998. So
what pay-per-view was that?
That was King of the Ring.
Was it?
It was King of the Ring, 1998. Wow. This one is tough to fairly rate.
You're calling this overrated? That match overrated?
I'm calling it overrated. I'm going to pull up the star rating. Listen, I don't know. And maybe I'm coming from a place where being in the business, what actually makes a match, what actually tells a story. Maybe I'm a little snobbish. I don't really know that there was the story as much as it was Mick Foley just being a fucking maniac.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the story, it was told. I got it up here right now. It got 4.5 stars.
I think that's fair.
You
do?
I
wouldn't give it a 5-star rating. Not out of 5. I'd probably give it a 4 to 4.5.
I'm gonna break it down into what makes a great match for me. I'm gonna say this. I mean, the stunts, if you want to call them stunts, and Mick Foley would probably be upset about hearing that. It was a stunt. Being thrown off of the fucking cell was a stunt.
Oh, no doubt.
Is that being part of the story of how crazy and how determined he was? And Jim Ross calling it is epic stuff. Falling through the cage, that wasn't even supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was complete accident.
Oh, wait a minute, it wasn't?
No, we got chokeslammed through the cage. It's supposed to be chokeslammed on the cage. The cage gave away.
His body literally broke all those boards in the ring.
Yeah.
No fucking way.
That was such a terrifying fall that it actually.
Even you confirming it right now for me, I still don't believe it.
No, that was not a planned spot.
Wow.
Undertaker wrestled that match on a broken ankle, and then people forget there was like thumbtacks involved at the end. But that's the thing is I think that after the crazy cage bump, there was still quite a bit of a match involved.
Oh yeah, the match went on for like another 5 or 10 minutes, I think,
and it wasn't even necessary. Because here's the thing is.
Even Mick Foley got up.
Yeah, even like if you're talking about your movie and you get the crazy epic climax scene, that's it, right? And then let's just iron out the details. No, that was the beginning. And so everything after that gets kind of cast by the wayside. A reason why I don't think it's necessarily a great match is because nobody ever thought for a second that Foley was going to win that thing. No, I mean there was never even one hint at all that he had a chance to win. It was basically. Look at this crazy motherfucker surviving, which that's a story, but
all right.
Yeah, I don't know.
So if Foley won the match, do you think it would have been a 5-star match?
No, I don't know that Foley necessarily needed
its
to
4.5.
win the match. I think it needed to. I don't know. That's the thing is once that bump happened, which again was really one of the first things of the match.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what everybody remembers. I mean, you remember falling through later too, but that's the thing is. So you talk about those first 2 minutes and being a memorable, crazy ass 2 minutes. Of course, the match itself being one guy trying to beat the other. I don't think the story got told that well because it was just kind of a put Foley out of his misery, beat him already sort of deal. And you still didn't even really get behind him where you wanted him to win, and you shouldn't because he was the heel. That's the other thing. The heel shouldn't have sympathy on him.
You're right.
If it was the other shoe on the foot where Taker was
Undertaker seen as a face, a baby
yeah,
face?
Going into that match, Taker was definitely the baby face. Mankind, I think, was aligned with Kane, maybe Paul Bearer too. He was definitely the heel going in though. It was,
okay.
And so yeah, if the shoe was on the other foot,
I can't remember.
The
I remember
Undertaker
watching
was his crazy, scary self heel. throwing poor old Goofy Mick Foley off of the cage, and and that's kind of. It's kind of how we felt watching it. Was like, come on, Mick, you can do it. But that wasn't the idea. He was a heel, and nobody really wanted to see the Undertaker lose because he was the beloved babyface.
Yeah.
So we remember the crazy spots, 100%. I don't think that necessarily makes it a great match for me. I don't know. I wouldn't give it a rating. I really wouldn't, because I don't think it's fair to say it was a great match, because I don't think it was a great match. I think it was crazy and it was incredibly memorable. For a memorable moment, it's 5 stars. For the match itself, I don't know how to rate it.
Do you think there's been a better Hell in a Cell match since?
Yes, Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker, No Mercy, 2002.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah. Maybe 2000.
I might have already.
Yeah,
seen
2002.
Because I think I was still watching in 2002. But
yeah,
I don't know. When I think of Hell in a Cell, I think of that match.
Oh, I think of Shawn and Taker. I think Shawn and
Really?
Taker, the first one, is absolutely the best one. And I think Brock and Taker is incredibly underrated. There is some, I think honestly better matches. I think, this is going to sound like I'm trolling, but I think Triple H and Batista had an amazing Hell in a Cell match in 2005. I really do.
Wow.
I think Taker and Triple H had a better Hell in a Cell match. This is what the match itself was, where it really built the drama, where you really weren't sure who was going to win or what was going to happen. I think those are better matches. None are more memorable by any means, but the actual match itself.
I see your logic, but that I feel like that match, because of Mick Foley in general, and Undertaker as well, but because of Mick Foley, that match is forever an iconic match. Like that match will never be forgotten, and I think it at least deserves 4 stars, if not the 4.5.
I really don't know. It's such a conundrum for me on how to rate that star wise. I wouldn't give it a 4.5. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that it was a dud or anything like that just because it didn't tell a typical story of a match. Not all matches have to have a typical story. I don't know what my rating would be, but I think if you're talking a 4.5 star match, I don't think it's there.
Right.
I really don't.
I can accept that.
Can you?
Could have said worse things. You know what I mean?
Memorable, absolutely. Great match. Not so much.
No, you definitely could have said worse things. The other night, Jeremy Rogers tried to tell me AJ Styles wasn't the best wrestler in the world.
Well, who did he say it was?
He didn't say.
You gotta have a backup.
He's just hating on him.
See, that's just it. If you're just gonna come in hating and trolling, you at least have to have an opinion to back it up to say why you don't think so or why somebody else is.
Yeah. Like maybe he's not the best wrestler in the world. He's definitely in the top 3 to 5.
Did he not say he was there?
I don't know. I tried to drop it because I was going to get
You're
angry.
going to get angry. We don't want to get angry talking wrestling. We want to have a...
his favorite dude, he loves Dolph Ziggler, which I like Dolph Ziggler, but he loves him.
Dolph Ziggler isn't on AJ Styles' level.
No.
Get out of town with that.
But I got off subject there. I just had to throw that out there.
Any other overrated matches you want to talk about?
You like I said, I had Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 12 on here. I didn't watch it, but I was going to say something. I was like... Oh, you also you said that the Undertaker Triple H
the Hell in a Cell
match was better than that, and I actually just watched that right before you came over here, and you're right, that was a great.
It was a great match.
Great match. It wasn't much to it, but I saw what it was. It was called End of an Era for a reason, and they really played on that.
Again, what was tough about those matches was that you never really felt like, because Undertaker's streak was such a thing there, where I remember really. We're kind of sidebarring here. I remember really thinking the only time the Undertaker streak was in danger was against Randy Orton because he was doing the Legend Killer deal, and that was a few years prior to that.
Yeah, they could have. You didn't know. For all WWE could have pulled a fast one and be like, we want to keep this Legend Killer gimmick going.
Right. You felt like there was no way Triple H would be the guy to break it, as much as people like to think that he has to be the absolute top guy and buries everybody.
I wouldn't have doubted it purely for that reason.
I think, listen, the Triple H episode is necessary because Josh and I talk about how underrated we feel Triple H is.
Oh, Triple H. After Shawn Michaels retired, Triple H became my boy.
Yeah.
I loved Triple H. I always had mad respect. Even though you hear things about him and that him marrying Stephanie, everybody knows the deal with Triple H.
Sure.
Watches. But no, Triple H to me is one of he's a future Hall of Famer for sure.
Yeah.
And
one
of the best of all time.
Even if he didn't run the company and can put himself in, yeah, he deserves it.
I'm glad he wasn't the first ones in though. Like he needs to wait at least like another like. I'm glad he's waiting. He wasn't one of the first people in the Hall of Fame. I think that would have been a little cocky.
Put him in every year. 1 year is himself. 1 year with DX. 1 year with Evolution.
He's gonna induct every version of the Hunter Hearst Helmsley, even the French version of Hunter Hearst Helmsley that was in WCW.
And then, he was like Jean-Paul Levesque.
Something like that.
Yeah. Terra Ryzen. Get them all in there. No.
Yeah, and then they made him a Connecticut Blue Blood.
The Connecticut Blue Blood, yeah.
Stole the gimmick completely. Pretty much. Yeah.
All right, well, let's now we talked to Overrated, and again, those ones are a little bit stiffer because those are matches that are ingrained in everybody's minds as great all-time matches, and we're throwing some reasons out there where we felt might not be the case.
Yeah.
I think what will be a little bit more fun though is doing the underrated ones.
Oh yeah,
doing some underrated ones, and we're gonna do something completely different. We're each gonna pick one match today that for anybody who is able to, we want you to hit pause on the podcast when we tell you, get the WWE Network fired up, and we'll tell you where to go.
Oh, yeah.
And watch along with us.
We're going to pull a Stone Cold Steve Austin today.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to watch along. We're going to pull up, pick a match of our choice, something fun, maybe a match that you haven't seen before, and introduce you to something new. So as a matter of fact, we'll start this now. We'll give you guys a few seconds, if you haven't yet. Pull up the WWE Network. And I got my match already queued up here, so we'll start with my choice. I'm going to choose a match from Vengeance 2003, and once you pull up your network, it will be the fourth match on the card. It's a tag team title match. This is the world's greatest tag team. That was Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, going against Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman. Now, with those four workers involved, thinking this should be a good match. And I remember 2003 is a really cool year for me because that was my first year in the business. I debuted in February 2003. Okay. So all my wrestling I started watching from a different light. This was back in the day where we'd hit up B-Dubs really to go watch all your pay-per-views, and I remember going and seeing this with a couple other wrestlers and trainees from my wrestling school. So we're at B-Dubs. I wasn't 21 yet, so I'm not even drinking beers. Excuse me. But I remember, getting my food and BSing with the guys and all that. And this match came on again, like, oh, yeah, this should be a good match. And then, man, a couple minutes in, my eyes were captivated. And, dude, this match ended up being incredible. Meltzer gave it 4 stars, which I think is every last bit deserved. It's only a 13-minute match. A lot of times when you get your 4 or 5-star matches, they're usually some 20-plus minute classics, epics. This one is about 13 minutes, and it's just nonstop action.
All right.
So if you got it queued up, we're at actually 54:39 on the network, and it is the 4th match on the show, and I'm about to hit play.
All right, I like this. Let's go ahead and do this full screen. Fuck it. Rey Mysterio.
2003, I think, was a pretty cool time in the company because it was really when they were starting to settle in with all the changes they had made. They had acquired WCW and ECW at the beginning of 2001. They did the brand split around the middle of 2002. Also changed from WWF to WWE at that time.
Wow.
So the brand split's about a year old at this point, and they were doing brand exclusive pay-per-views, which seemed kind of crazy at the time. You figure...
So I was
go ahead.
I was going to say, I was a sophomore in high school. This is like right about the time I stopped watching. Like, we're just around this time. So
You kind of started getting out at that time?
Yeah.
Well, while we got a Billy Kidman entrance, which is not exciting, this would be a good time to talk about it. What kind of steered you away? You're still in school.
I think at that point, they were starting to go towards the more PG type stuff. John Cena had come around. I wasn't a big fan of his. I wasn't around for this. Last time I saw Billy Kidman, he had long hair.
He had long hair and looked like Scott Stapp, had the wife beater and the jean shorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was a big Billy Kidman
Yeah, he
guy.
thickened up for sure. I think trying to get into that WWE mode. You want to talk a couple underrated dudes? I mean, Shelton Benjamin's still working to this day.
Yeah.
But, man, this was a great tag team. And these guys were kids here. They were both coming straight out of the OVW school.
Yeah, for sure.
This is when, man, all that OVW class, they're here now. You got Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista, who's Randy Orton. They're all up in the main roster at this point. Lesnar, of course, got pushed to the moon. Cena was right in the middle of his Thug Life deal. He had a really good match with The Undertaker on this show.
Did he?
Where he was actually heel. Taker was doing the biker, big evil Red Devil character at this time. They actually had a really good match on this show too. This is a underrated show altogether for me.
Cool. I'm psyched. I'm psyched to see it. Wow, yeah, they were super young.
Yeah, they're babies here. Rey Mysterio probably only on his 4th or 5th knee surgery, so those knees are still pretty good right now for him.
Believe it. This is Big Pant Mysterio.
I think he was always Big Pant Mysterio in the WWE. Yeah, I think
in WWE. Yeah,
WWE.
He's a fucking unlockable character in the new 2K
you
game.
You know what's something cool about Rey Mysterio is to this day, I have I got twin 5-year-old girls, as anybody who knows me probably knows, and they like watching wrestling with me. But they've never seen Rey Mysterio in their lifetime, right? They're 5 years old. So that WWE 19 commercial comes on. They're showing some of the clips, and they just show all the masks. And little Ellie, she's just like, "Who is that, Daddy?" I'm like, "That's Rey Mysterio. Can we watch Rey Mysterio?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "The power of the WWE Network, sweetie. Yes, we can."
Yeah. Hell yeah, we can.
And you think about how exciting a guy like that is with the colors and the masks and the action. Here, check this out once.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
That's
you
why
could almost tell. This is a point where Mysterio had kind of done it all in WCW, and so, I don't want to say he was ever unmotivated or phoned it in, but like there's a lot of times where a Mysterio match just felt like a Mysterio match. You can almost tell he was fired up to be working with these young guys because Haas and Benjamin could go.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he loved new talent, especially these guys.
I mean, yeah, Kidman was a popular cruiserweight in WCW. I'll tell you, I don't have a whole lot of memorable moments from him in his WWF run, but man, he was on fire in this match, as we're about to continue seeing.
I remember the name Charlie Haas, but I don't remember much about him.
If you tuned out at about this time, Charlie Haas didn't have much of a better run than this, unfortunately. No. Yeah, it was one of those things. I mean, he's a hell of an in-ring worker, but he didn't have the athleticism that Shelton did, the pop and the flash. And neither guy is going to wow you in an in-ring promo, which, as you know, even today,
Shelton
man,
Benjamin's no good.
No, and to this day, you talk the people into the building. That's how you make your money. And if you can't do it, you're probably not going to have a prominent role in the company.
Yeah, well, you really haven't seen him much either.
Shoo!
Man, he needs to come back. We don't have enough of that stuff anymore.
I don't know how much of that he can. Well, the thing is Ray's earned it where he doesn't have to do it on a nightly basis anymore. He doesn't have to necessarily do all the house shows, and because you got to figure the way he flies and lands. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, it obviously has been with all of his surgeries. It's been rough on his body.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. I remember back when he unmasked.
Oh,
I remember what his face looks like.
If you listen to the Tony Schiavone podcast, he'll tell you every time how handsome of a young man he was.
That's so crazy. I can't believe they did that either.
Oh, man, that was a Eric Bischoff narrative where he didn't feel they were marketable in the mask. He wanted to market them without it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it got some eyeballs watching. It got me watching.
Well, and the thing is that if you take the mask off, you could really make it mean something. I remember with Mysterio, it was just basically Kevin Nash being a dick. It was just more to get Nash over as being a dick, beating Mysterio. Juventud Guerrera lost to Jericho, and Jericho, I remember, would wear the mask around, which was kind of cool. Whew! Some elevation.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Benjamin and Haas debuted and they were Team Angle, kind of hanging out with Kurt Angle?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I remember him kicking him out and everything too.
Yeah,
all pissed off.
They wanted Kurt to turn babyface. So this is after that. This is WrestleMania 19 was earlier this year. Kurt had to miss time with that neck injury.
He had a broken neck.
Basically a broken neck. So when he came back, he was babyface, and they wanted to keep these guys heel. So they split away from Kurt, formed the world's greatest tag team, and they still had a pretty good run going forward.
I remember bits and pieces from documentaries and whatnot.
I bet if we look back at underrated matches, there would really dug deep in some research, you'd probably find quite a few Shelton Benjamin ones.
Yeah. So I don't know too much about him. I know I'm not a big fan of him right now or any of the things he's done lately.
Sure. Well, yeah, this match was 15 years ago, so you think it'd be like, oh yeah, he's pretty athletic. Man, this is 15 years after he was getting started.
In his prime, essentially. 1, 2.
Did you ever see the match with him and Shawn Michaels on Monday Night Raw? It was the classic one where Shelton came springboarding off the top. Shawn caught him in midair with a super kick.
No, I have not.
It's widely known as one of the best Raw matches of all time. Yeah, I think what might be a fun episode in the future, Mark, is to go back to the era that Mark didn't watch and find all the great matches. And I mean, you're just gonna be hitting
we can start a series. Mark catching up.
Mark catching up. You're gonna have a smorgasbord of good shit.
Yeah, because there's probably a good
Now here's the thing:
8 or 10 years I wasn't watching.
I missed a lot of it too because this is I'm in my early 20s, where I didn't have cable, and believe it or not, a lot of times didn't have internet.
Oh, yeah.
Not everybody had internet back in the day, man. It was kind of expensive. You didn't have a computer.
Now you can't live without it.
Now you can. Well, now everybody has the internet on any device possible. But back then, all right, here, check this out.
Oh.
Shoo!
Wow.
That was
That's
some
why
impact.
Billy Kidman was on my underrated list.
Billy Kidman didn't create the shooting star press, but I think he was one of the first to really bring it to the mainstream. And, of course, I mean, we know guys like Evan Bourne, Matt Sydal, or M-Dog, Matt Cross. There's guys that have prettier shooting star presses, but woo.
Yeah, that was nice.
To the floor, and as we mentioned earlier, Billy Kidman isn't a tiny guy at this point. He's definitely put on some mass.
No, he bulked up a bit.
And it's a big dude come crashing down like that. Ooh, that was
was super
close 2 count.
I almost think he didn't even actually kick out. He just let him loose.
Hey, the referees are told you count the 3. Usually they'll know you're finished going in, but hey, if you don't get up, they're going to count the 3. You can't make the referee look stupid.
No, you've seen it happen. Into the turnbuckle.
Out of nowhere. So we're going to be talking about some underrated matches here, and I've seen some of your list, and I did a little research myself. It's kind of looking up, underrated matches on the network, and a lot of them were matches where I wouldn't call underrated because I'm like, no, I know that match, and I know it's great.
Yeah.
This is a match that I don't think anybody ever talks about. Like, it's just a middle of the card match in the middle of the year and a SmackDown exclusive where it wasn't a memorable. Any sort of memorable outcome or anything like that. But, I mean, this is just one of those hell of a tag team match that I figure if you got 15 minutes to spare, you should watch.
I can see why. I agree. I definitely never seen this match, never heard anybody talk about this match.
Exactly. So I was trying to dig a little bit deeper for
this is all new to me right here.
Matches that just nobody talks about.
Man.
Bow and arrow lock. I got to tell you, man, that takes some core strength to have a guy on top of you like that and keep your shoulders off the mat. Because that's the first thing with a move like that. You count the shoulders down.
I was about to say, that's probably more work for Shelton than it was Kidman. Man.
That was a move where like we've probably seen it in a video game, and me and Josh in a basement match tried to do and can't really figure out how to do it. That and the old Mexican surfboard. That was like the coolest looking move ever. But
yeah. Mexican surfboard that always seemed impossible. Like you have to be a
I've
damn
been,
ballerina.
I've been in it. Yeah, and it takes just a lot of core strength from both guys to make that move work.
You couldn't do that to a big man.
It's not comfortable, I'll tell you. Another move I don't think I've ever been in or even wanted to try was Tajiri's Tarantula, where he'd kind of climb over the ropes, hook their arms with his legs, and grab the legs with his arms like a Boston Crab almost in the ropes.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks. I gotta say, I miss the old school logo. It was much easier to draw. Scribble shit.
That's basically what they call it, the scratch logo.
Yeah, scratch.
Look at that. Easy, just such an easy tag team thing to do. Right before you make the tag, heel comes in, the referee doesn't see it. Oh, the crowd gets pissed. And then, of course, the double team on the other side. Just a simple strategy.
And then the 1, 2, yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you can tell with the basic formula. I mean, right now we've seen 2 heats. Rey Mysterio's getting worked over early. Now it's Kidman. That's always a nice thing to do in a tag match when you have a little bit of time. You say, hey, let's do 2 heats. Because it's a good way to build that crowd up and then bring them back down and build them back up again. Oh.
Ooh. Yeah, that was a hell of a land.
Because, again, in a match, you want to tell the story. So you beat down the babyface, and you just want to see him make that tag, the hot tag that come in, the house on fire, the crowd's behind it. Well, hey, you get a little bit of time in your match, do it twice.
Yeah.
No reason not to. And what's smart is that Ray was, no knock on Billy Kidman, but he was definitely the more popular babyface. So he'll eventually get his comeback. Second, looks like they might have forgot the spot the first time, so they go back to it.
Yeah. Building up that tag.
I'll tell you, there's the hot tag, and here we go.
Off the
nice. I don't
that
remember him doing that ever.
That was some good camera angles and cuts too.
Oh, well, man, the WWF has always been second to none on. They know exactly. And I'd even heard, too, where the producers want to get with the wrestlers, say, hey, what are you going to do? Where are you going to be? And this is how they know how to shoot it.
Yeah.
Because it's huge. I mean, just to get the perfect angle for everything.
See, that was spot on, too. Like, they were ready for that one. That was nice. That was perfectly executed. I thought that was it. Shit.
They got you. They got you sold.
They did.
Which, again, if we go back to my discussion about Undertaker and Mankind, it's just I never ever felt like Mankind was going to win the match. So, again, you were excited to see what was going to happen next because of all the crazy shit.
Yeah.
But I ultimately want to believe that either guy can win the match, even if it's an underdog story. Like, make me believe it.
Yeah. What? That was strange.
Yeah. Kidman kind of rocked, couldn't get out. It's a weak excuse to have the referee's back turned, but, you try to do everything you can to protect your referee.
Yeah.
Because in the tag match, it can get hectic, and you always want to see all 4 guys kind of flying around because it's exciting. But you also don't want to make your ref look like a complete idiot, where he just lets you do it. The first 10 minutes of the match, they're strictly enforcing the rules. Hey, get out by the 5 count. But for now, because it's exciting,
Yeah.
So it might have been kind of flimsy to why his back was turned, but they tried.
That's all to better the product. Kidman sliding in. Oh, okay.
Check this shit out.
Nice. For a second there, I thought they blew his spot, but no, there it was. Not. Oh, so they got me again.
Got you again.
They got me twice.
And this is great on Mysterio Kidman's part. Both really selling the shit out of that. Because of, I mean, they had you sold. But now they're selling the audience again that they thought there's no way he could have got out of that.
Yeah. Mysterio's like the perfect underdog too.
Oh yeah.
Being
Again,
so little.
easy story to tell. Yeah. See a blind tag there, and then oh,
Nice. I felt it.
That was legitimate. Yeah.
So that. Technically, that was 3 times they got me because I thought for sure he was gonna break that up.
And they caught him there just a split second too late. So that was my pick for our watch along, folks. I hope everybody enjoyed. Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman versus the World's Greatest Tag Team. Again, Meltzer gave it 4 stars for a match again that didn't have any, not a ton of build up. It's just basically, hey, a tag team challenger versus the tag team champions.
Basic mid card match, really.
Middle of the card, and those guys went all out. Had a hell of a match.
I agree. I haven't heard anybody talk shit about that match. So like I said, I didn't even really know about that match until this moment. But knowing all that, I would definitely say this match was underrated.
There we go. Look at that.
I agree. That was great. This actually made me like Shelton Benjamin. Really, they haven't been showing how great he can be.
That is going to be the show. So when did you get back in, Mark? What was about WrestleMania
2016 Royal Rumble. AJ Styles came out number 3, and I was like, well, now I got a reason to stick around.
There's way too much to cover in that era, but we'll find maybe like one great match from each year and have a fun like Mark catches up sort of show.
We can, dude. That's probably a good 8 to 10 years of catching up. So there's 8 episodes right there. You can make it a little mini series.
I think it sounds like a lot of fun for me. I'm gonna have some fun digging into it, saying, "Hey, did you see this match?" And you're gonna say no. I'll be like, "Oh shit."
Some of them I might have saw. I did YouTube quite a few different matches before.
Gotcha. So you see probably all the classics where you hear like, "Oh, you got to see this," but
yeah.
But something like this, completely under the radar. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I never heard about this one.
So before we pull up your choice to watch along, Mark, let's just kind of talk some more underrated stuff. I know one match that you definitely mentioned, and I completely agree with you, is absolutely underrated, was Bret Hart and the British Bulldog from In Your House 95.
December 95.
December 95. And it goes, I would kind of want to go on a sidebar where I think a lot of times there are rematches or sequels to classic matches that really fly under the radar because nobody would ever call Bret and Bulldog 1 from SummerSlam 92 underrated because everybody knows that's a classic.
Actually, that's a note I wrote down.
You actually had it on underrated?
Actually brushed aside because Bret versus Bulldog SummerSlam.
Oh, you pushed it aside? Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
it gets overlooked because of that.
Nobody would ever call it an underrated match. It's a great match. I wouldn't call it overrated either. It's an absolute classic. We all know it to be a classic. Not a lot of people have seen, or if they have, remember the In Your House 95 match where completely different story being told because you had a clear-cut heel and babyface in the second match.
Jim Neidhart was in the crowd, like, heckling essentially the whole time. Like
Bret getting that blood and and you mentioned there's a couple spots where it was brutal, and you had a clear-cut heel and babyface. And this was a match where going in, I think Bret had just started his title run because he beat Diesel at Survivor Series 95.
Yeah, this was a title match.
So you're kind of going in thinking, well, it's the British Bulldog. Like, it's just a guy for Bret to beat.
Yeah.
But, boy, by the time that match was rolling, you thought, maybe not. Maybe this is the time Davey beats him, man, because Davey beat him at SummerSlam 92. And you're thinking, maybe Davey has his number. And Bret bleeding buckets in that match.
See, the blood thing with Bret was weird, too, because I noticed that because Cornette was with Bulldog in this match.
Right.
And I actually remember he had a Santa Claus cover on his because it was December
tennis racket.
Yeah.
Oh, corny being festive. Goddamn.
And I think
goddamn Santa Claus, motherfucker.
Exactly. And he cut a hell of a promo right before the match too.
Oh, Cornette's a fantastic promo. We don't want Josh and Jeff turning off, but I could talk all day about how great Cornette and the Midnight Express were. We're not doing that today. No worries.
But I think Bret was supposed to bleed when he was thrown into the stairs, steps, the steel steps, and I think because they gave him a little bit of time to I would assume to cut himself, and nothing really happened. Like, he didn't really bleed. So then Bulldog picked him up and actually slammed his back into the ring post from the outside, and then you hear Jerry Lawler. I think I actually wrote this in my notes. Jerry Lawler said that he hit his head on the ring post to kind of sell the fact that he was bleeding from it, but he didn't.
Right.
And you could see Brett in the corner on the mat outside, like, just kind of crawling. I was like, all right, he's got to be cutting himself again right now. But you see Bulldog walk over to Cornette, and Cornette's looking at Brett, and you can tell him, like, kind of calling, not really calling a spot, but it's like, I don't think he
Right, maybe
enough.
giving him his minute
Exactly.
to yeah.
So they were almost doing it again. And then all of a sudden they cut back to Brett, and there's literally puddles of blood all over the mat.
That was probably also an era where they weren't allowed to bleed. And did you read Bret Hart's book?
I did not.
It's a long read, but it's a great read. I mean, he mentioned in his Roddy Piper match where he got blood, and they weren't allowed to. That was WrestleMania 892, where he kind of convinced Vince that it was an accident. Then also the Austin match at WrestleMania 13, which will not be on an underrated list at all because that is a fucking classic,
yeah.
And everybody knows it. That it's well documented at this point that Brett felt the match needed blood, because they wanted Stone Cold passing out in the sharpshooter.
Yeah.
He felt the blood would have put over the top. He was absolutely right.
For sure.
But he also said that they kind of did that behind Vince's back. He said, if we get heat, I'll take the heat for it. So I'm imagining that this match, they were probably not supposed to bleed either. He probably tried to convince Vince that it was hard way. However they did it. And again, we talked about blood earlier. The blood added to this one. And that was a match that was on the In Your House pay-per-views weren't one of the big shows. They had them monthly. I remember that being in Hershey, PA. It was very close to where I lived. I actually had some friends that went there.
Oh, shit.
And, but it was a December In Your House pay-per-view in between Survivor Series and Royal Rumble. So it's just kind of that, like, we just got to kill some space here, right?
And hell did they kill some space.
And so not a pay-per-view that they presented as a must-watch, but now with the power of the network, go back, December 1995, watch that match.
Definitely watch it. Like I said, there's well, I didn't say this, but I said it earlier, but there's 2 instances in which, actually 3 if you really think about it, where I thought Bulldog at least broke his neck or was going to die.
Yeah.
Because probably 5 to 10 minutes into the match, Brett gives him a pile driver where it looks like the same thing happened to Bulldog that happened to Stone Cold.
Oh,
with
really?
Owen Hart.
Like
his head just spikes into the mat.
Yeah.
And then later on, he gets thrown into the turnbuckle. But when Bulldog gets thrown into the turnbuckle, he goes in upside down.
Kind of like the flare flip, but he doesn't go all the way up.
And he slams into them turnbuckle, bounces off. He literally bounces on his head twice, goes boop, boop. On it. His feet are above his head.
That dude had traps for days. If he didn't have those, might have had a broken neck.
And then you have the big finish where it was just right after that head bounce, where he laid there for a while, and I was like, he might have just broke his neck.
Give him a minute.
Brett gives him a suplex off the rope. He lands so hard that Bulldog actually, after he lands, he just goes, fuck! and then Brett rolls on him, 1, 2, 3. That's the end of the match. That match was... Bulldog went through some shit in that match.
Yeah.
He put his life on the line.
Everybody remembers Brett bleeding, but in the end, it was the Bulldog really...
really getting the shit out of his stick. Oh, man.
Well, I wanted to bring that match up because I want to talk about those sequels, man. Like... Bret Hart, I mentioned it earlier, Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect, SummerSlam 91 is a classic. It's a great match. And if you think about how good Bret and Perfect were in that era, of course it's going to be a great match.
Yeah.
But a match nobody really talks about is the King of the Ring 1993. Did you ever go back and watch that pay-per-view?
Maybe. What match are you talking about?
Well, you're a Bret Hart fan. You should go back and watch it because it was Bret's night to shine. He had an opening match with Razor Ramon. The second match was him and Mr. Perfect. And at this point, they were both baby faces. Perfect kind of took over the role of the heel in the match a little bit. But that match, it didn't have the story involved because it wasn't for the Intercontinental title. It wasn't a strong heel versus babyface dynamic. But honestly, that might be the better of the two. The King of the Ring 1993, definitely worth checking out. And then the main event's Bret versus Bam Bam Bigelow, where they told a big guy, little guy story, and it was a hell of a match also.
Bam Bam Bigelow. Another underrated one.
Oh, God, yeah. Another sequel I know Josh and I were talking about, too. Did you ever check out Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 21?
No, but I've heard about it.
Okay. I mean, At that point, Kurt Angle was on fire. Shawn was a couple years into his comeback, and everybody knew that Shawn Michaels was Shawn Michaels, so that was a dream match, right?
Yeah.
Those two guys went out there at WrestleMania 21, killed it, stole the show, it was fantastic. Well, they had a rematch at Vengeance. Again, I think it was a June or a July pay-per-view. One of those kind of in-between ones between WrestleMania and SummerSlam where, you don't want to say they're killing time but killing space, but it was. They were just getting the pay-per-view buys and trying to get some good matches out there. So Shawn and Kurt had their rematch at Vengeance, and you could argue that one was a little bit better. Nobody talks about that one. Nobody talks about the rematch. People will still remember the first Shawn and Kurt match. So just some of those sequels that are the rematches that kind of get swept under the rug.
No, it's probably in most cases the first one was probably badass. It's probably hard
That's
to live
usually
up
how
to that
people
one.
feel about movies. Also,
Yeah. Sequels usually aren't good.
don't live up to the originals, but in some cases they do. And those are just a couple off the top of my head that I thought either were as good or surpassed the original.
I mean, the only other underrated ones I could think of. That's the first ever ladder match I wrote down for '92, but I never got to actually watch it.
Well, let's check it out. I remember seeing it, but it was a while ago.
Shawn Michaels versus Mankind at Mind Games.
Oh my God, yeah, that is a must see. That is a must see.
One I actually watched, and that was a more hardcore Shawn Michaels than I had seen, especially in that.
That was the time
period.
where it was like the Shawn, we know he's awesome, but let's see how tough he is sort of deal. It was in Philadelphia. Hardcore crowd even back in that day in '96. ECW actually was there. Man, that was a hell of a match. And I don't know. I think again, being underrated or overrated is kind of subjective. For somebody like me, that's followed wrestling my whole life. I've always known about that match, and I've always known if you haven't seen that, you should see it.
It's definitely worth watching.
But it's not a match that necessarily gets talked about. It's
not at all.
Yeah, it's not one of those all-time classics that people talk about, but it should be.
Shawn took a beating in that one.
Oh, it was a hell of a match.
It was sort of Mick Foley though. But you're already searching for it, so I guess I'll get right into it.
Yeah, I'm getting it queued up here.
Which I'm glad you are.
We'll watch from the beginning. We'll just kind of tab it to our match here.
Gotcha.
Go ahead and tell the folks what your choice is for our watch along.
This one was a little shorter, so we figured it'd be better for the watch along. But RVD versus Jeff Hardy for the hardcore title at Invasion 2001.
You sure you don't want to watch Nick Patrick and Earl Hebner? I totally did not remember that.
I don't know if it's
here.
underrated, but I'd be down. Yeah, it's more mid card. Actually, maybe it's towards the end.
There it is.
We go.
All right.
Wow, the
we
WWE
got Hardcore Holly at WAF New York.
Or no, the restaurant is what it was, I believe.
All right, so we'll click pause here so everybody can take a minute to jump on.
Yeah, it looks like we're at, what does that say,
122? 122.34, and it looks like the third to last match on the show. We got Tori Wilson and Stacey Keibler versus Trish Stratus and Lita. Might watch that on my own later.
Yeah.
And then the main event, the Alliance versus Team WF, is after this.
Yeah.
So we're at 122.34 on Invasion 2001. Before we get started, man, what was your memories of the Invasion angle? Definitely, I think in retrospect, could have been handled a lot better.
Actually, I have a pretty decent story.
Let's do it.
California visiting my dad when this was happening, and it was the only time I ever asked him to, or he ever actually. We're giving
a shout out to Big Phil Thomas out there.
Yeah, thanks, Dad, for 2001 buying this pay-per-view for me. And the place he lived, he had a home theater.
Okay.
With a 10-foot screen on the wall, so I was able to watch this in there with surround sound and everything. It was like I was there.
Yeah. That's amazing. That would be amazing today, 2018, not to mention in 2001.
And this was a big deal because it was the invasion of ECW and WCW and the WWE. So I was down. I actually still have this pay-per-view recorded on a VHS tape that I recorded that night.
Awesome.
And so I have very fond memories of this. Although the invasion angle could have been done way better.
Sure.
It was still exciting at the time. So.
Yeah. And then, so you got some fond memories going back.
For sure.
All right. Well, hopefully everybody's ready to go. We're at 122.34. It's the third to last match. We're going to watch Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy. Click play now.
All right. Exciting.
RVD, man. RVD was so hot at this era. Like he was the ECW brand in those latter years of ECW. I mean, it was always you can't wait for what RVD was going to do next. Innovative offense.
Yeah.
And really, like, I wouldn't call it a ripoff because their styles weren't exactly the same at all, but everybody knew the daredevil that Jeff Hardy was.
Yeah, for sure.
Back in at that time. So to get these two guys together almost seemed like a no-brainer once you got the ECW guys on board.
For sure. For sure. Not only that, but so many colors in this match. We got tiger stripes and colored hair. These guys were kind of the two cool dudes of the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is 2001, man. Style was different, but you had, laid back, airbrushed RVD.
Looking like Tony the fucking Tiger or something.
A little bit.
Meet Stone Cold Steve Austin with the skull on his chest. But, yeah.
Man, listen to that crowd reaction for Jeff Hardy here.
Oh, dude, they were so over then. They're still over. That's back when the
pretty cool set, man.
I was just about to say, this is when they started doing like real extravagant Titantrons.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was pretty much just the same basic thing, but with different screens.
Yeah, they just showed that pre-match angle with Van Dam. You know, they were trying to get all these WCW and ECW guys over as super heels. But, you know, it was tough with a guy like, tough with a guy like RVD where, you know, people were really excited to see him here. They knew that this match was going to be nonstop action, so I think they tried whatever they could to establish RVD as the heel going in.
It was real technical in the beginning. Like, within the first few minutes, too, they kind of fuck each other up.
Well, I like that. Yeah, it was well known about RVD. If you were in an RVD match, those fists and those kicks, they were going to be coming, man.
Well, I can't remember where it is. I know it's not too far in, but Jeff gets dropped on his head pretty heinously. We're
talking some underrated matches. Again, when I tell you these two guys on paper, you're going to say, well, of course that was good. But about a year from now, SummerSlam 02, we got RVD against Chris Benoit. Intercontinental title match. Again, I tell you those two guys, of course that's good. But how many times have you heard that being mentioned as an all-time classic match?
Yeah, well, it being Benoit, that's going to be a hard one. Anywhere in the public light or acknowledged from WWE themselves.
Difficult kind of going back and talking about Benoit matches. But at the time, I remember loving that match. And if you go back and watch it again, those two dudes just beat the shit out of each other.
Believe that.
Now I see we got a note for that Triple H Taka Michinoku match. That was one that came up a lot of times during my research, and I didn't get a chance to check that one out.
I couldn't find it. It would be hard to find a Raw, just a random Raw from 2000. Didn't tell you the month.
Do a little more research. Get a little deeper into that Google search, Mark.
I guess I'd have to.
Pulling this match up, pulling this.
Rock versus Chris Benoit Fully Loaded 2000 was on there. I didn't get it right. There was so many underrated matches.
Oh,
at two sides.
Rolling Thunder, can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
This match from Meltzer gets 4 stars. I
really
truly believe we're not going to have any trouble getting to that rate. It was the best match on the show. The main event got 3.5. It's the only thing that even approached it.
Yeah, I imagine this one wasn't too highly rated. This pay-per-view.
Well, what was widely criticized about the WCW invasion is that, you know, you wanted to get the stars. Now, granted, WCW had some good wrestlers, you know, come over. They had, you know, Mike Awesome and Canyon and Lance Storm. Some good wrestlers came along, but, you know, the dream matches was Stone Cold versus Goldberg. It was, you know, The Rock versus Hogan eventually did happen. Yeah. But, you know, Sting versus The Undertaker. These were the matches
Seeing
that
the outsiders come back.
Right. These are the matches that people wanted, and they just didn't get anything like that at all.
No, they
the
gave
stars
you Booker
weren't there.
T and, what's his name? Palumbo.
Chuck Palumbo.
And,
DDP came along. Guys that really want to come in there and wrestle and establish their brand further, which was great. But what it was that those guys had contracts that they were going to get paid to sit at home. So your Hulk Hogan, your Goldbergs, and your Stings. And I'm not sure what they were going through there, but it works.
See, with these guys, even the botches looked good.
Because everything was so high impact, man. Everything was just, Hardy always did that running the railing deal. So whatever RVD did, just running and knocking him off was.
Just take
hey,
a crazy
works,
bump and you'll be fine. Yeah. That actually reminds me of something we talked about earlier. What? This is completely off the subject, so I'll just throw it out there. But the Tommaso versus Ciampa match, that dude in the crowd with the sign and the stop sign inside his sign.
Oh, yeah. He hits the guy with the sign, and you're like, what the hell?
That was definitely set up, but I just thought that was so strange. And just this whole segment here just reminded me of that. That was nice.
I mean, RVD was parkour before parkour existed, man.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, anywhere he could plant, he was flipping off of.
Oh, that's right. The hardcore title was Falls Count Anywhere.
Falls Count Anywhere.
Oh. He's probably stoned during this match. He definitely looks high.
These guys had a rematch the next month. It was SummerSlam 2001, and it was a ladder match for the hardcore title. And I remember going in thinking, man, this match was so great. Like, how great would a ladder match be? And I remember being a little underwhelmed. I just looked it up. Meltzer gave that 3.5 stars. So he did rate it a little bit lower than this one. But I remember previously just feeling a lot better about this match than that ladder match. Of course, this being the first match, was really, really excited to see what these two could do together.
Yeah. I remember this being pretty slick. Little spinning kick. That was also like a spinning leg drop.
And the thing is he hit that pretty often in ECW. But ECW at that point was just, it was a big indie. It was really what Ring of Honor is now. It wasn't, they had some national TV exposure with TNM, but it didn't draw well. If you ever watch the rise and fall of ECW, you'll know why. So a lot of these fans maybe had heard of Rob Van Dam, but not necessarily seen his whole repertoire of moves, and they're really into his shit here.
Yeah. I remember he first came around, everybody was asking if he was related to Jean-Claude.
There's a slight resemblance.
A little bit. A little bit. I don't know. I always looked at RVD and he just screamed like late 80s, early 90s to me. Like he should be on the beach lifting weights.
Well, that was pretty much him.
Yeah, like
smoking a doob.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Oh, that's a rough bump.
Yeah.
They got a mat there, yeah, and that's going to absorb some of it, but there's just no give to concrete.
It's still solid, yeah.
And I've taken some bumps on the floor, but you figure the impact coming off the apron like that.
Dude, I've jumped on my bed a little too hard. You know what I mean?
And you feel it. You feel it in your bones, right?
Yeah. Damn.
That's a gargantuan ladder.
It really is. 20-foot ladder, I think. I don't know if it's really 20 feet, but it's probably close. You can probably reach 20 feet on that ladder.
And then you got to figure where your eye level is. That's what I always tell people. Just how the top rope is scary. Look how far you're looking down at this point.
Oh. This. Just fuck it. I'm gonna just push your ass over. And then he's lands right on the ramp.
And the thing is somebody some of the crazy bumps that you see later where you go through tables and some that's actually like designed to be a big extravagant bump. That one right there is terrifying.
Yeah, that's just straight
a long
falling
way
onto the ground.
Your body's not meant to do that.
No.
I love it because a lot of times you'll see him climbing the ladder and you set up this big extravagant spot. Man, sometimes you climb a giant ladder, just push that fucker off.
Yep.
You put like that. There's some logic involved.
There's velocity at that point too. You're hitting the ground even faster. Ooh, that was a good one. those chair shots.
No, they never feel good.
They can't, because those are real chairs.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, you get a steel chair, you want to find one that's a little bit lighter than heavier, because those heavy ones, man, will just really jar your bones. But even those lighter ones, they still sting. Oh, the Van Damme.
That was so good.
Knocked him off the stage.
See, and those headshots with the chairs, man, some of them looked so bad. They probably were really bad.
Well, we talked in a prior episode about concussions and knowing what we know now, and it's a good thing. Because back then, man, everything extreme was just such a hot button thing back then. Everything was extreme, and, man, make it look real. Take those shots to the head. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
And knowing the research we know now, no, you end up not being all right.
Yeah. So you'll be all right. Watch that. The Rock versus Mankind, Royal Rumble 1999.
Oh, God, yeah, I quit match. I'd rather not.
That is probably the most brutal match I've ever seen.
What did it end up being? I think 11 or 12 chair shots, unprotected.
Yeah, they agreed to, like, 3, and he did, like, anywhere from 9 to 11 or something, like 9 to 12.
That's insanity.
He couldn't even defend himself. He had handcuffs on.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm really enjoying this match. A lot of times, you figure these two guys and what they're known for, they would just transition maybe from big move to big move to big move. And while there has been some big spots, the fighting in between seems pretty legit. Just as, Rob Van Dam pushing him off the ladder and then coming towards him, and Jeff just having that ladder nearby and throwing it up in his face. I like that sort of stuff. It makes you feel like, no, this is a real fight.
Yeah. They're mixing their technical, more high flight type stuff with the, like, brutal, hardcore brawling.
Yeah.
It's a nice mix of both. This is just cool. That was a total skateboarder movie. Like, he is a surfer on the beach.
Yeah, and I try not to be overly critical and things like that, because I want to enjoy what I see, but there are some times where you got the guy down, he's laying on the mat for 30 seconds, a minute, while you're setting up, say, 2, 3, 4 tables and a ladder, and it's like you could have just pinned him.
Yeah.
Oh, that DDT take. I try to...
that's a beautiful DDT.
I try to mirror the RVD DDT bump.
Mm. No. There's...
Oh, jeez.
Wow. If I remember correctly, the finish to this match is kind of a classic thing you don't see much of anymore.
Well, let's not spoil it for our watchers along, anybody who wants to participate in this with us.
But, no, I look forward to it. Oh, he's bleeding from the forehead. That was
again, yeah, it looks like it's probably hard way, because that's not a gusher by any means, but
no.
I mean, you can only have a chair flying through your, by your head so many times.
Those backsides of those chairs are pretty heinous.
Oh God, yeah. Woo! Just got out in the nick of time.
That can't feel good.
No, it's a long way down to crash like that. We're going to look 5-star here.
Looking like a little monkey.
Oh!
See, and that's the hardcore title. That thing's all broken and sharp and shit.
That's going to do it. Man,
There was. And that's that classic finish you don't see much of anymore. Laying the belt on him.
There was another match that was only, about 11, 12 minutes, but just nonstop action through and through.
I mean, that's a hell of a match there that I remember watching back in the day now, but, like, at the time when I was looking it up, I was like, really? I don't remember this. But as I was watching it, it just all started coming back to me.
What was good about this match is that these guys had a couple more matches, and you knew that they could up the crazy.
Yeah.
As we were mentioning earlier, Jeff could jump off some more ladders and some tables, and they could really up the spectacle of what they were doing. This match felt like a fucking fight.
Yeah.
For 10 minutes, with each guy knowing that they could go high risk, and Jeff went for one and it didn't work out. RVD went for his and it did. That was a hell of a match. 4 stars, easy. I agree completely with Meltzer on this one. And if folks haven't seen this one before, should go and check it out.
Yeah. No, I could have said it better myself, sir. This match was phenomenal.
Well, man, I hope everybody listening or watching at home got some motivation to maybe fire up the network, check out some of the underrated matches that we suggested. And again, it's only a Google search away. Underrated matches on the network. We were covering WWF for this run, but of course there's all the WCW and ECW stuff on there as well.
Yeah.
Just a plethora, just so much stuff that's available right at your fingertips to watch. So if you got a favorite wrestler and you know all his classics, say your Bret Harts, your Shawn Michaels, even your Stone Cold Steve Austins, you know all the classics, man, go try to dig a little deeper. Find some of those underrated, those hidden gems. So much good stuff available. Can't recommend it enough. Take a couple of hours maybe and check out some classic matches that don't get talked about as often.
Yeah. Drop a comment or something. Let us know what you think. Let us know some overrated or underrated matches
please do. Some underrated matches again. Hey, if it's something in the air that Mark wasn't watching, anything before Rumble 90 or Rumble 2016, hit him up. Give him some suggestions.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Give me some suggestions. Maybe a match that I need to take a second look at. Or if you disagree with some of our comments, let us know.
For sure. Let us know anything. We're just glad you're watching.
We're glad you're watching, listening. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review if you get a moment. We would truly, truly appreciate it.
Yep.
Tell your friends. Figure if anybody out there wanting to hear a couple dudes talk wrestling, you want to get a fans and an inside perspective on wrestling, I think this is the place to be.
For sure. No doubt about that.
All right, well, we're going to come back with you here shortly. I think we're going to get some content ready to lock and load. But until then, bye, Internet.